And why were you thinking about that today?
I don't know. They were changing my bed. The idea of tasting somebody else's piss.
It was harrowing?
The idea. It was both harrowing and the idea was exciting. So then I remember you stood there, Mickey, in the stream, in the woods, and I was in the stream on the rocks, and you stood there over me. It was very hard for you to start getting it out, and finally there came a drop. Ooh, she said, recalling that drop.
Oh, he muttered, his grip tightening on her hand.
It came down, and as it came upon me, I realized that it was warm. I dared to taste it, and I started with my tongue to lick around my lips, and there was this piss, and the whole idea that you were standing above me, and that at first you strained to get it out, and then suddenly came this enormous piss. It just came into my face, and it was warm, and it was just fantastic. It was exciting, and everywhere, and it was like a whirlwind. What I was feeling, the emotions, I don't know how to describe it more than that. I tasted it. It tasted sweet, like beer. It had that kind of taste to it, and just something forbidden that made it so wonderful. That I could be allowed to do this that was so forbidden, and that I could drink it, and I wanted more, and I was lying there, and I wanted more. And I wanted it on my eyes, and I wanted it in my face, and I wanted lots of it in my face. I wanted to be showered by it in my face, and I wanted to drink it. And then I wanted it all the way then once I allowed myself to let go. And so I wanted everything of it. I wanted it on my tits. I remember also you were standing over me, and you did it on my cunt also. And I started playing with myself as you were doing it. And you made me come, you know. I was coming while you were just squirting it over my cunt. It was very warm. It was so warm. I just felt totally, I don't know, taken by it. Then I come home afterward, and I'm sitting in the kitchen remembering it, because I had to sort it through. Did I like it or not? And I realized that yes, it was like we had a pact. We had a secret pact that tied us together. I'd never done that before. I didn't expect to do it with anyone else. And today I was thinking, I never will. But it really made me have a pact with you. It was like we were forever united in that.
We are,
Both crying now.
and pissing on me? He asked her.
It was funny. I was unsure. Not so much that I wouldn't want to do it, but to let go of my own, would you like my piss? The idea of abandoning myself in that way to you. Because I was sort of, not that I wouldn't like it, but how would you react to it? My own piss in your face. You wouldn't like the way it tasted, or that it would offend you. So I was shy about it at first. But once I started doing it, and I realized that it was okay, that I didn't have to be frightened, and seeing your reaction, you took some of it, you even drank some of it, and I like it. And I had to stand above you. And so it made me feel that I can do anything with you, and anything is all right. We're in this together, and we can do anything together, everything together. And Mickey, it was just wonderful.
I have a confession to make.
Oh, tonight? Yes, what?
I was not so delighted to drink it. A laugh came out of that tiny face, a laugh a lot bigger than the face. I wanted to do it, Sabbath told her, and when it first began to come out of you, it came out in a little trickle. That was okay, but then when it came out the full stuff. And then when it came the full stuff, you're talking like me. I have made you speak translated Croatian. I taught you too. You sure did. So tell me, she said excitedly. So what happened when it began to come out the full stuff? The warmth, I was astonished by it. Exactly. But it's very pleasant that it's warm. And there I was between your legs, and I had to take it in my mouth and drink it. I wasn't sure I wanted to. She nodded. Uh-huh. You could tell. Yes. Yes, darling. It thrilled me mostly because I could see it was thrilling you. And it really was. It was. I could see that. And that was enough for me. But I couldn't abandon myself to drinking it quite the way you could. You? How strange, she said. Tell me about that. I guess I have idiosyncrasies too. How did it taste to you? Was it sweet? Because yours was very sweet. Beer and sweet together. Do you know what you said, Drenka, when you finished the first time? No. You don't remember when you finished pissing on me? Do you remember? She asked. Could I forget? You were radiant. You were glowing. You said triumphantly, I did it. I did it. It made me think. Yes, Rosanna drank all the wrong stuff. Yes, she laughed. Yes, I think maybe I did. Yes, you see, that fits what I told you, that I was so shy. Exactly. It was like I passed a test. No, not to pass a test, as though... As though what? Maybe what I was worried about was that I would regret it. There are many times when one has ideas to do things, and maybe you get led in to do something, and afterward there's a sense of shame, and I wasn't sure. Would I have shame for it? That was what was so incredible about it. And now I even love to talk about it with you. It was a lustful feeling, and a feeling of giving also, in a way that I could not do to anyone else. By pissing on me. Yes, and allowing you to piss on me. I feel that. I felt that. You were totally with me then, in all senses, as I was lying there afterward in the stream with you, holding you in the stream, in all senses, not just as my lover, as my friend, as someone you know, when you are sick, I can help you, and as my total blood brother. You know, it was a rite, a passage of a rite or something. Rite of passage. Yes, rite of passage. Very definitely. That's true. It's so forbidden, and yet it has the most innocent meaning of anything. Yes, he said, looking at her dying. How innocent it is. You were my teacher, my American boyfriend. You taught me everything. The songs, shit from Shinola. To be free to fuck, to have a good time with my body, to not hate having such big tits. You did that. About fucking you knew before you met me, Drenka dear, at least a little something. But in my life, married, I did not have many outlets in this regard. You did all right, kid. Oh, Mickey, it was wonderful. It was fun. The whole kitten and caboodle. It was like living, and to be denied that whole part would be a great loss. You gave it to me. You gave me a double life. I couldn't have endured with just one. I'm proud of you and your double life. All I regret, she said, crying again, crying with him, the two of them in tears. But he had got used to that. We can live with widespread, and we can live with tears night after night. We can live with all of it as long as it doesn't stop. Is that we couldn't sleep together too many nights, to commingle with you. Commingle? Why not? I wish tonight you could spend the night. I do too, but I'll be here tomorrow night. I meant it up at the grotto. I didn't want to fuck any more men, even without the cancer. I wouldn't do that, even if I was alive. You are alive. It is here and now. It's tonight. You're alive. I wouldn't do it. You're the one. I always loved fucking, but I don't regret that I have fucked many. It would have been a great loss to have had otherwise. Some of them, they were sort of wasted times. You must have had that too, haven't you? With women you didn't enjoy? Yes. Yes, I had experiences where the men would just want to fuck you whether they cared about you or not. That was always harder for me. I give my heart. I give myself in my fucking. You do indeed. And then, after just a little drifting, she fell asleep, and so he went home. I'm leaving now, and within 2 hours she threw a clot and was dead. So those were her last words, in English anyway. I give my heart, I give myself in my fucking. Hard to top that, to co-mingle with you, Drenka. To co-mingle with you now. Amid the dark fields halfway up the hill, the living room lights were softly burning. From the bottom of the steep drive where he had paused to reconsider what he was doing, what he had already half-thinkingly done, the lights made the house look cozy enough for him to call the place home. But from outside at night, they all look cozy. Once you're no longer outside looking in, but inside looking out. Still, the closest he had come to a home was this one. And because he couldn't leave what was left of Morty nowhere, here was where he'd come with Morty's things. Had to. He was not a beggar any longer, not a mischievous intruder, nor was he washing in towards shore somewhere south of Point Pleasant, nor at dawn would someone out for a jog along the beach with the lab find his remains among the night's debris, nor was he boxed in beside Schloss. He was the custodian of Morty's things. And Rosie, I'll bet I can keep her from cutting off my dick. Start there. Set modest goals. See if you can get through the rest of April without her cutting it off. After that, you can raise your sights a little. But begin with just that and see if it's doable. If it's not, if she does cut it off, well, then you'll have to rethink your position. Then you and Morty's things will have to find a home elsewhere. In the meantime, display to her not the least apprehension about being mutilated in your sleep. And don't forget the benefits of her stupidity. One of the first rules of any marriage. 1, don't forget the benefits of his stupidity. 2, he cannot be taught anything by you, so don't try. There were 10 of these he'd worked up for Drenka to help her through a stretch with Mattia, when just the meticulous way Mattia double-tied his shoelaces made her see life as nothing but blackness. 3, take a vacation from your grievances. 4, the regularity of it isn't totally worthless, etc. You could even fuck her. Now this was an odd thought to have. He could not, on reflection, remember thinking anything more aberrant in his entire life. When they'd moved up north, of course, he used to fuck Rosie all the time, into her up to the hilt all the time. But when they'd come up here, she was 27. No, first thing was to keep her from cutting off his dick. Trying to fuck her could even work against him. Modest goals. You're just looking for a home for you and Mort. In the living room, she would be reading. In there with a fire going, stretched out on the sofa, reading something somebody at the meeting had given her. That's all she read now. The big book, the 12-step book, meditation books, pamphlets, booklets, an endless supply of them. Not since leaving Usher had she stopped reading a new one that was just like the old one that she could not live without. First the meeting, then the booklets by the fire, then in bed with Ovaltine and the personal stories section of the big book. Alcoholics' anecdotes with which she put herself to sleep. He believed that when the lights were out, she prayed some AA prayer in bed. At least she had the decency in his presence never to mutter the thing aloud, though sometimes he gave it to her anyway. Who could resist? You know what my higher power is, Rosanna. I figured out what my higher power is. It's Esquire magazine. Couldn't you be more respectful? You don't understand. This is a very serious business for me. I'm in recovery. And how long is that going to last again? Well, it's a day at a time, but it will be forever. It isn't something you could just put aside. You have to keep going. I guess I won't see the end of it, will I? You can't, because it's a constant process. All your art books on those shelves, you never look at one. You never look at a picture in any of them. I don't feel guilty, Mickey. I don't need art. I need this. This is my medicine. Came to believe 24 hours, the little red book. It's an awfully tiny aperture onto life, my dear. I'm trying to get some peace, some inner peace, serenity. I'm getting in touch with my inner self. Tell me, what ever happened to the Rosanna Kavanagh who could think for herself? Oh, her. She married Mickey Sabbath. That took care of that. In her robe, reading that shit. He imagines her, robe undone, holding her book with her right hand while diddling herself idly with the left. Ambidextrous, but happens to feel more comfortable playing around with the left. Reading and not even aware for a while that she is starting up. A bit distracted by the reading. Tends to like to have some cloth between her hand and her pussy. Nightgown, robe tonight, panties. The material turns her on. Why that is, she doesn't quite know. Uses 3 fingers, outer fingers on the lips, middle finger pressing the button. Circular movement of the fingers, and soon the pelvis in a circular movement too. Middle finger on the button, not the tip of the finger, the ball of the finger. First a light pressure, knows automatically where the button is, of course. Then a little pause because she's still reading, but it's getting more difficult to concentrate on what she is reading. Not sure she wants to do it yet. The pressure of the ball of the 2 fingers surrounding the button. As she gets more excited, the ball of 1 finger is right on the button, yet the feeling is somehow spread by the other fingers. Finally, she puts the book down. Intermittently now, her fingers are still while her pelvis does the moving. Then back on the button, round and round, the other hand on her breast, on her nipples, squeezing. She has now decided that she is not going to be reading for a while. Takes her right hand down from her breast and rubs the whole thing forcefully with both hands, still outside the material. 3 fingers next, over where the button is. Always knows exactly where it is, which is better than I can say for myself. Nearly 50 years on the job, and still the damn thing is there, and then it's here, and then it's gone, and you can spend half a minute looking everywhere before her kindly hands reposition you. There, no, there, right there, yes, yes. And now she stretches her legs straight out, a long cat stretch, her hands pressed tight between her thighs, squeezing, manages a pre-cum that way, a Vorspeise, squeezing the whole cunt as hard as she can. And now she has decided she doesn't want to stop. Sometimes she does it through the cloth the whole way. Tonight, she wants her fingers on the inside of the lips, and she pushes the panties aside, going up and down now, straight up and down, and not in a circular motion, and faster, going much faster. Then, using the other hand, she slips her middle finger, elegant long finger it is too, into her cunt, very fast with it, until she feels the first premonitory convulsions, moves her legs back up now, spreading the legs apart while bending the knees and bringing the feet together so that almost beneath her buttocks the toes are touching. Opens herself up all the way, wide open now, and constant contact with 2 fingers on the clit, the middle finger and the ring finger, up and down, tensing herself, buttocks up now, raising herself up on her bent legs. Now she slows down a little, stretches her legs out to slow it down, bringing it almost to a stop. Almost. And now she bends her legs up again. This is the position in which she wants to come. Here begins the muttering, "Can I? Can I?" All the while she is making the decision when she is muttering aloud, "Can I? Can I? Can I come?" Whom does she ask? The imaginary man. Men. A whole lot of them. One of them, the leader, the masked one, the boy, the black one. Asking herself, maybe, or her father, or asking no one at all. The words alone are enough. The begging, "Can I? Can I come? Please, can I?" And now she is keeping the pressure even, now a little harder, increasing the pressure, constant pressure, just right there. And now she feels it, she feels it. Now she's got to keep going. "Can I? Can I? Please." And here are the noises, ladies and gentlemen, in combinations peculiar to each woman alone. The noises that could serve as well as fingerprints to individualize the whole sex for the FBI. Ooh, ah. Because now she's started. She's coming. And the pressure is harder, but not extremely hard. Not so hard that it hurts. 2 fingers up and down, wide pressure. She wants wide pressure because she wants to come again. And now the feeling is moving down toward the cunt. And she puts her finger in, and now she thinks she could enjoy having a dildo there, but she's got her finger there, and that's it. And so she goes up and down with her finger as though somebody were fucking her. And voluntarily now she tightens her cunt to increase the feeling, squeezes tight to give herself more feeling, up and down while still working the clit. It changes what she feels when she introduces her finger into the cunt. On the button, it's very precise, but with the finger in her cunt, the feeling is distributed, and that's what she wants, the distribution of the feeling. Though it's physically not easy to coordinate the 2 hands with supreme concentration, she works to overcome the difficulty and does. Oh, oh, oh! And then she lies there, and she pants for a while. And then she picks up the book and goes back to her reading. And, in all, there is much here to be compared with Bernstein conducting Mahler's Eighth. Sabbath felt like offering a standing ovation, but seated in the car at the foot of the long dirt drive leading up nearly 100 yards to the house, he could only stamp his feet and cry, "Brava, Rosie, brava!" and lift his God Bless America yarmulke in admiration of the crescendos and the diminuendos, of the floating and the madness, of the controlled uncontrollableness, of the sustained finale's driving force, better than Bernstein. His wife, he'd forgotten all about her. 12, 15 years since she let me watch. What would it be like to fuck Rosanna? Percentage of guys still do it to their wives, or so the pollsters would have us believe. Wouldn't be totally freakish. Wonder what the smell is like, if she even. The swampy scent Rosanna exuded in her 20s, most unique, not at all fishy, but vegetative, rooty, in the muck, with the rot. Loved it. Took you right to the edge of gagging, and then, in its depths, something so sinister that, boomo, beyond repugnance into the promised land, to where all one's being resides in one's nose, where existence amounts to nothing more or less than the feral, foaming cunt, where the thing that matters most in the world, is the frenzy that's in your face. There, no, there, right there, yes, there. Their ecstatic machinery would have dazzled Aquinas had his senses experienced its economy. If anything served Sabbath as an argument for the existence of God, if anything marked creation with God's essence, it was the thousands upon thousands of orgasms dancing on the head of that pin. The mother of the microchip, the triumph of evolution, right up with the retina and the tympanic membrane. I wouldn't mind growing one myself in the middle of my forehead like Cyclops' eye. Why do they need jewelry when they have that? What's a ruby next to that? There for no reason other than the reason that it's there for. Not to run water through, not to spread seed, but included in the package, like a toy at the bottom of the old Cracker Jack box, a gift to each and every little girl from God. All hail the Maker, a generous, wonderful, fun-loving guy with a real soft spot for women, much like Sabbath himself. There was a home, inside it a wife. In the car were things to revere and protect, replacing Drenka's grave as the meaning and the purpose of his life. He need never lie down weeping on her grave again. And thinking that, he was seized by the miracle of having survived all these years in the hands of a person like himself, astonished at having discovered amid Fish's squalor a reason to go on at the mercy of the inexplicable experience that he was, and astonished by the nonsensical thought that he wasn't, that he hadn't survived himself, that he had perished down there in Jersey, very likely by his own hand, and that he was at the foot of the drive of the afterlife, entering that fairy tale freed at last from the urge that was the hallmark of his living, the overwhelming desire to be elsewhere. He was elsewhere. He had achieved the goal. Now it was clear to him. If that little house halfway up that hill, on the outskirts of this little village where I am the biggest scandal around, if that is an elsewhere, nothing is. Elsewhere is wherever you are. Elsewhere. Sabbath is your home, and no one is your mate. If ever anyone was no one, it's Rosie. Search the planet, and you will not find at any latitude a setup more suitable than this one. This is your niche. The solitary hillside, the cozy cottage, the 12-step wife. This is Sabbath's indecent theater. Remarkable as the women coming out of their houses and onto the street to buy their string beans from Fish's truck. Hello, remarkable. But nearly an hour after the lights had gone out at the front of the house and come on again in their bedroom around to the side by the carport, Sabbath was still 100 yards away, down at the bottom of the drive. Was the afterlife really for him? He was having serious second thoughts about having killed himself. All he'd had to struggle through before was the prospect of oblivion, alongside fellow mariner Schloss, across from the esteemed Wisemans, a stone's throw from all the family. But oblivion is oblivion, nonetheless, and getting himself ready for it had not been simple. What he could never have imagined was that after being left there to rot overseen by those dogs, he would find himself not in oblivion, oblivious, but in Madamasca Falls, that instead of facing the eternal nothing, he would be back in that bed with Rosie beside him, forever seeking inner peace. But then he had never figured on Morty's things. He took the driveway curves just as slowly as the car could negotiate them. If he was years in reaching the house, it would make no difference now. He was dead. Death was changeless, and there was no longer the illusion of ever escaping. Time was endless, or it had stopped. Amounted to the same thing. All the fluctuations gone. That's the difference. No flux. And flux was human life all over. To be dead and to know it is a bit like dreaming and knowing it, but oddly, everything was more firmly established dead. Sabbath didn't feel spectral in any way. His sense couldn't have been sharper that nothing was growing, nothing altering, nothing aging, that nothing was imaginary and nothing was real. No longer was there objectivity or subjectivity, no longer any question as to what things are or are not. Everything simply held together by death. No way around his knowing that he was no longer on a day-to-day basis. No worry about suddenly dying. Suddenness was over. Here for good in the non-world of no choice. Yet, if this was death, whose pickup truck was parked in the carport beside Rosie's old Jeep? A rippling American flag was resplendently painted across the width of its tailgate. Local plates. If all flux was gone, what the fuck was this? Somebody with local plates. There was more to death than people realized, and more to Rosanna. In bed, they were watching television. That's why nobody heard him drive up, though he got the feeling looking at the two of them nestled together, taking turns biting into a plump green pear, whose juice they licked from each other's taut bellies whenever it dribbled from their mouths. He got the feeling that nothing might have pleased Rosie more than knowing that her husband was back and couldn't miss finding out what had been happening while he was gone. In a corner of the bedroom, all his clothes had been dumped on the floor, everything of his removed from the closet and the bureau drawers and piled in the corner, waiting to be bagged or cartoned off, or, when the weekend came, dragged up the hill to the ravine and pushed by the bedmates over the side. Dispossessed, Ida had usurped his plot at the cemetery, and Krista from the gourmet shop, whose tongue Drenka had held in such high esteem and whom Rosie had waved hello to in town, just someone she knew from AA, had taken his place in the house. If this was death, then death was just life incognito. All the blessings that make this world the entertaining place that it is exist no less laughably in the non-world, too. They watched television while, from the dark beyond the window, Sabbath watched them. Krista would by now be 25, but the only change that he could see was that the close-clipped blonde hair had grown in black, and that it was her cunt that had been shaved. Not the model child, never that, far from that, but the child model, most provocatively. The hair fell elfinly in ragged little points about her head, as though an 8-year-old had scissored Krista an upside-down crown. The mouth was still no gaping thing, but the cold opening of a German slot machine. And yet, the violet surprise of her eyes, the glazed Teutonic snowdrift of her ass, the sweet lure of those uncorroded curves, made her no less pleasant to ogle than when he'd faithfully stood by as an assistant tool handler and she'd worked her lesbian magic on Drenka. And Rosanna, though nearly a foot taller than Krista, even Sabbath was taller than Krista, could hardly have been taken for more than twice Krista's age, even more slender than Krista, small-breasted like her, the breasts probably shaped much the same as when she moved to her mother at 13. 4 years of no booze, followed by 48 hours without him, and his childless wife, in her 6th decade of life, miraculously looked to be still in bud. The program they had on was about gorillas. Occasionally, Sabbath got a glimpse of the gorillas knuckle-walking around in the tall grass or sitting about, scratching their heads and their asses. He discovered that gorillas do a lot of scratching. When the program was over, Rosie switched off the set and without a word began to pretend that she was a mother gorilla grooming her little one, who was Krista. Watching from the window while they passed themselves off as gorilla mom and child, he began to remember how extensive a talent Rosie once displayed for following his lead when he was trying out stage voices at the dinner table or amusing her along these lines in bed, lip-sticking a beard and a cap on the head of his prick and using his hard-on for a puppet. After the show, she got to play with the puppet, every child's dream. The real ring of openness in her laughter then, spunky, heedless, a little wicked. Nothing to hide except everything, nothing to fear except everything. Yes, distinctly he could remember her enjoying his foolishness very much. Nothing could have been more serious than the attention Rosie gave to Krista's gorilla coat. It was as though she were not only cleansing her of insects and lice, but purifying both of them through this studious contact. All the emotions were invisible, and yet not a lifeless second passed between them. Rosie's gestures were of such delicacy and precision that they appeared to be at the conscientious service of some pure religious idea. Nothing was going on other than what was going on, but to Sabbath it seemed tremendous, tremendous. He had arrived at the loneliest moment of his life. Under his eyes, Krista and Rosie developed complete gorilla personalities, the two of them living in the gorilla dimension, embodying the height of gorilla soulfulness, enacting the highest act of gorilla rationality and love. The whole world was the other one, the great importance of the other body. Their unity, giver the taker, taker the giver. Krista, perfectly confident of Rosie's hands grazing her, a map on which Rosie's fingers trace a journey of sensual tact. And between them that liquid, intensely wordless gorilla look, The only noises rising from the bed, Krista's chicken-like baby gorilla clucks of comfort and contentment. Rosanna Gorilla, I am nature's tool. I am the fulfiller of every need. If only the two of them, husband and wife, had pretended to be gorillas, nothing but gorillas all the time. Instead, they had pretended only too well to be being human beings. When the two had had enough, they fell into a laughing embrace. Each gave the other a juicy, demonstrably human kiss, and the lights were flicked off at either side of the bed. But before Sabbath could size up the situation, decide what to do next, move on or move in, he heard Rosie and Krista reciting together a prayer? Of course. Dear God, Rosie's nightly AA prayer. He was finally to hear it spoken aloud. Dear God. The duet was faultlessly rendered, neither of them groping for either the words or the feeling. Two voices, two females, harmoniously interlaced. Young Krista was the ardent one, whereas Rose's recitation was marked by the careful thought that she had clearly given every word. There was in her voice both gravity and mellowness. She had battled her way to that inner peace so long unattainable. The agony of that childhood, deprivation, humiliation, injustice, abuse, was behind her, and the tribulation of the, for her, inescapable adulthood with a stand-in savage for her father was behind her, and the relief from the pain was audible. Her utterance was quieter and calmer than Krista's, but the effect was of a communion profoundly absorbed. New beginning, new being, new beloved, although, as Sabbath could virtually guarantee her, formed from more or less the same mold as the old beloved. He could envision the letter posted to hell the day after Krista took off with Rosanna's mother's antique silver. If Mother hadn't had to run for her life, if I hadn't had to attend that girls' school until she returned, if you hadn't forced me to wear that Loden jacket, if you didn't scream at the housekeepers, if you didn't fuck the housekeepers, if you hadn't married that monstrous Irene, if you hadn't written me those crazy letters, if you hadn't had those disgusting lips and hands that gripped me like a vice, Father, you've done it again. You robbed me of a normal relationship with a normal man. You robbed me of a normal relationship with a normal woman. You robbed me of everything. Dear God, I have no idea where I am going. I do not see the road ahead of me. I cannot know for certain where it will end. Nor do I really know myself. And the fact that I think I am following your will does not mean that I am actually doing so. But I believe this. I believe. In Sabbath, their prayer encountered no resistance. If only he could get everything else he detested to leave not so much as a pinhole in his brain. He himself prayed that God was omniscient. Otherwise, he wasn't going to know what the fuck these two were talking about. I believe that the desire to please you does, in fact, please you. I hope I have that desire in everything I do. I hope I never do anything apart from that desire. And I know that if I do this, you will lead me by the right road, though I may know nothing about it at the time. Therefore I will trust you always, though I may seem to be lost, and in the shadow of death, I will not be afraid because I know you will never leave me to face my troubles alone. And here began the bliss. Stirring each other up took no time at all. These weren't the cluckings of two contented gorillas Sabbath was overhearing now. The two of them were no longer playing at anything. There was nothing nonsensical any longer about a single sound they made. No need for dear God now. They had taken unto themselves the task of divinity and were laying bare the rapture with their tongues. Amazing organ, the human tongue. Take a good look at it someday. He himself well remembered Krista's, the muscular, vibrating tongue of the snake, and the awe it inspired in him no less than in Drenka. Amazing all a tongue can say. A digital clock face aglow, green, was the sole object Sabbath could discern in the room. It was on the unseen table at the other side of the unseen bed that previously had been his side. He believed he still had some of his death books piled there, unless they were among the clothes dumped in the corner. He felt as though he had been expelled from an enormous cunt whose insides he had been roaming freely all his life. The very house where he had lived had become a cunt into which he could never insert himself again. This observation, arrived at independently of the intellect, only intensified as the odors that exist only within women wafted out of them and through the opening of the window, where they envelop the flag-draped Sabbath in the violent misery of everything lost. If irrationality smelled, it would smell like this. If delirium smelled, it would smell like this. If anger, impulse, appetite, antagonism, ego, yes, this sublime stink of spoilage was the smell of everything that converges to become the human soul. Whatever the witches were cooking up for Macbeth must have smelled just like this. No wonder Duncan doesn't make it through the night. It seemed for a long while as though they would never be finished, and that consequently, on this hillside, at this window, hidden behind this night, he was to be chained to this ridiculousness forever. They could not seem to find what they needed. A piece or a fragment of something was missing, and they were speaking fluently together, purportedly about the missing piece, in a language consisting entirely of gasps and moans and exhalations and shrieks, a musical miscellany of explosive shrieks. First, one of them seemed to imagine she had found it, and the other seemed to imagine she had found it, and then in the voluminous blackness of their house of cunt, in the same immense instant, they landed on it together, and never before had Sabbath heard in any language anything like the speech pouring out of Rosie and Krista upon discovering the whereabouts of that little piece that made the whole picture complete. In the end, she had been satisfying herself in a way that, were she Drinka, he might have enjoyed. It wasn't that he felt shut out and tragically abandoned because Rosanna was doing anything that, from another tangent, might not actually have stirred him to fellow feeling. Why should he regard as other than resonant with his own greatest creations her creation of an orgasmic haven apart from him? Rosanna's roundabout journey had, from all appearances, carried her back to where they'd begun as insatiable lovers, hiding from Nicky in his puppet studio. In fact, his entire fantasy of her masturbating was precisely what he'd been conning himself with as part of his getting ready to go back and try to what? To reassert what? To recover what? To reach back into the past for what? For the residue of what? And that's when he erupted. When male gorillas get angry, it's terrifying. The largest and heaviest of the primates, they get angry on a very grand scale. He had not known that he could open his mouth so wide, nor had he ever before realized, even as a puppet performer, what a rich repertoire of frightening noises he was able to produce. The hoots, the barks, the roars, ferocious, deafening, all the while jumping up and down and pounding his chest and tearing out by the roots the plants growing at the foot of the window, and then dashing to and fro, and at last hammering his crippled fists on the window until the frame gave way and went crashing into the room, where Rosie and Krista were screaming hysterically. Beating a tattoo on his chest he enjoyed the most. All these years he'd had the chest for it, and all these years he had let it go to waste. The pain in his hands was excruciating, but he did not desist. He was the wildest of the wild gorillas. "Don't you dare to threaten me," thumping and thumping his large chest, breaking apart the house. In the car, he flipped on the headlights and saw that he had frightened the raccoons off as well. They had been out working the garbage cans back of the kitchen. Rosie must have forgotten to latch shut the slatted wooden cover to the rack where the 4 cans were stored. And though the raccoons were gone now, there was garbage strewn everywhere. That explained the smell of spoilage that, standing outside the window, he had attributed to the women on the bed. He should have known they didn't have it in 'em. He parked at the entrance to the cemetery, not 30 yards from Drinka's grave. On the back of a garage repair bill that he dug out of the glove compartment, he composed his will. He worked by the gleam from the dashboard and the overhead lamp. His flashlight batteries had petered out. juice enough for just a pinprick of light. But then, he'd been going on these batteries since she died. Outside the car, the blackness was immense, shocking, a night as challenging to the mind as any he had ever known at sea. I leave $7,450 plus change, see envelope in jacket pocket, to establish a prize of $500 to be awarded annually to a female member of the graduating class of any of the colleges in the four-college program, $500 to whoever's fucked more male faculty members than any other graduating senior during her undergraduate years. I leave the clothes on my back and in the brown paper bag to my friends at the Astor Place subway station. I leave my tape recorder to Kathy Goolsby. I leave 20 dirty pictures of Dr. Michelle Cowan to the State of Israel. Mickey Sabbath, April 13, 1944. 94, he crossed out 44. 1929 to 1994. On the back of another repair bill, he wrote, "My brother's things are to be buried with me. The flag, the yarmulke, the letters, everything in the carton. Lay me unclothed in the coffin, surrounded by his things." He slipped this in with Mr. Crawford's receipts and marked the envelope "Additional Instructions." Now, the note. Coherent or incoherent? Angry or forgiving? Malevolent or loving? High-flown or colloquial? With or without quotations from Shakespeare, Martin Buber, and Montaigne? Hallmark should sell a card. All the great thoughts he had not reached were beyond his enumeration. There was no bottom to what he did not have to say about the meaning of his life. And something funny is superfluous. Suicide is funny. Not enough people realize that. It's not driven by despair or revenge. It's not born of madness or bitterness or humiliation. It's not a camouflaged homicide or a grandiose display of self-loathing. It's the finishing touch to the running gag. He would count himself an even bigger washout to be snuffed out any other way. For anybody who loves a joke, suicide is indispensable. For a puppeteer, particularly, there is nothing more natural. Disappear behind the screen, insert the hand, and instead of performing as yourself, take the finale as the puppet. Think about it. There is no more thoroughly amusing way to go. A man who wants to die, a living being choosing death. That's entertainment. No note. The notes are a sham, whatever you write. So now, for the last of last things. He stepped out of the car into the black granite world of the blind. Unlike suicide, seeing nothing was not amusing, and proceeding with his arms before him, he felt as old a wreck as his Tiresias fish. He tried to picture the cemetery, but his 5-month-long familiarity with it did not prevent him from wandering off almost immediately in among the graves. Soon he was breathless from stumbling and falling and getting back to his feet, despite the cautious, tiny steps he was taking. The ground was drenched from the day's heavy rain, and her grave was up the hill. And it would be a shame, having come this far, if a coronary beat him to the punch. To die of natural causes would be the unsurpassable insult. But his heart had had enough and would haul the load no more. His heart was not a horse, and it informed him of this, malevolently enough, by kicking him in the chest with its hooves. So Sabbath ascended unassisted. Imagine a stone carrying itself, and that should give you some idea of how he struggled to reach Drinka's grave, where, in what was to be his grand farewell to the far-fetched, he proceeded to urinate on it. The stream was painfully slow to start, and he was fearful at first that he was asking of himself the impossible, and that there was in him nothing left of him. He imagined himself a man who could not get through a night without 3 trips to the toilet, standing there into the next century, unable to draw a drop of water with which to anoint this sacred ground. Could what was impeding the urine flow be that wall of conscience that deprives a person of what is most himself? What had happened to his entire conception of life? It had cost him dearly to clear a space where he could exist in the world as antagonistically as he liked. Where was the contempt with which he had overridden their hatred? Where were the laws, the code of conduct by which he had labored to be free from their stupidly harmonious expectations? Yes, the strictures that had inspired his buffoonery were taking their vengeance at last. All the taboos that seek to abate our monstrosity had shut his water down. Perfect metaphor, empty vessel. And then the stream began. A trickle at first, just some feeble dribbling, as when your knife slices open an onion and the weeping consists of a tear or two sliding down either cheek. But then a spurt followed that, and a second spurt, and then a flow, and then a gush, and then a surge. And then Sabbath was peeing with a power that surprised even him, the way strangers to grief can be astounded by the unstoppable copiousness of their river of tears. He could not remember when he had peed like this last, maybe 50 years ago, to drill a hole in her grave, to drive through to the coffin's lid to Drenka's mouth. But he might as well try by peeing to activate a turbine. He could never again reach her in any way. "I did it," she cried. "I did it." And he had never adored anyone more. He did not stop, however. He couldn't. He was to urine what a wet nurse is to milk. Drenched Drenka, bubbling spring, mother of moisture and overflow, surging, streaming Drenka, drinker of the juices of the human vine. Sweetheart, rise up before you turn to dust. Come back and be revived, oozing all your secretions. But even by watering all spring and summer the plot that all her men had seeded, he could not bring her back, either Drenka or anyone else. And did he think otherwise, the anti-illusionist? Well, it is sometimes hard, even for people with the best intentions, to remember 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, that nobody dead can live again. There is nothing on earth more firmly established. It's all that you can know for sure, and no one wants to know it. "Excuse me, sir." Someone was tapping from behind, someone at Sabbath's shoulder. "Stop what you are doing, sir. Stop now." But he was not finished. "You are pissing on my mother's grave." And ferociously, by his beard, Sabbath was swung around, and when the light of a powerful lamp was turned on his eyes, he threw up his hands as though something that could pierce his skull was flying into his face. The light passed down the length of his body, then upward from his feet to his eyes. He was painted like this, coat upon coat, 6 or 7 times, until at last the beam illuminated the prick alone, seemingly keeping an eye out from between the edges of the flag, a spout without menace or significance of any kind, intermittently dripping as though in need of repair. It did not look like anything that would have inspired the mind of mankind over the millennia to give it 5 minutes of thought, let alone to conclude that, were it not for the tyranny of this tube, our species' story here on Earth would be altered beyond recognition, beginning, middle, and end. "Get it out of my sight." Sabbath could easily have tucked himself into his trousers and pulled up the zipper, but he wouldn't. "Stash it." But Sabbath did nothing. "What are you?" Sabbath was asked, the light blinding him once again. "You desecrate my mother's grave. You desecrate the American flag. You desecrate your own people with your stupid fucking prick-out, wearing the skull cap of your own religion. This is a religious act. Wrapped in the flag, proudly, pissing my guts out." Matthew now began to wail. "My mother, that was my mother, you filthy fucking creep. You depraved my mother." "Depraved? Officer Balich, you are too old to idealize your parents." "She left a diary. My father has read the diary. He read the things you made her do. Even my cousin, my little kid cousin. Drink it, Drenka, drink it." And so swept away was he by his own tears that he was no longer even lighting up Sabbath's face. The beam pointed rather to the ground, illuminating the puddle at the foot of the grave. Barrett's head had been smashed open. Sabbath was expecting worse. Once he realized by whom he had been apprehended, he did not believe that he was going to walk away alive. Nor did he want to. It was played out, that thing which allowed him to improvise endlessly and which kept him alive. The nutty tawdriness is over. Yet once again did he walk away, as he had from hanging himself at the Cowans, as he had from drowning himself at the shore, walked away, leaving Matthew sobbing at the grave, and propelled still by the thing that allowed him to improvise endlessly, stumbled through the blackness down the hill. Not that he didn't want to hear more from Matthew about Drenka's diary, not that he wouldn't have greedily read every word. It had never occurred to him that Drenka was writing everything down, in English or in Serbo-Croatian, out of pride or incredulity, to trace the course of her daring or of her depravity. Why hadn't she warned him in the hospital that there was this diary? Too sick by then to think of it? Had leaving it to be found been inadvertent, an oversight, or the boldest thing she had ever done? I did it. I did it. This was who was living under all the nice clothes, and none of you ever knew. Or had she left it behind because she had not the strength to throw it out? Yes, such diaries have a privileged place among one's skeletons. One cannot easily free oneself of words themselves, finally freed from their daily duty to justify and to conceal. It takes more courage than one might imagine to destroy the secret diaries, the letters and the Polaroids, the videotapes and the audiotapes, the locks of pubic hair, the unlaundered items of intimate apparel, to obliterate forever the relic-like force of these things that, almost alone of our possessions, decisively answer the question, can it really be that I am like this? A record of the self at Mardi Gras, or of the self in its true and untrammeled existence? Either way, these dangerous treasures, hidden from those near and dear beneath the lingerie, in the darkest reaches of the file cabinet, under lock and key at the local bank, constitute a record of that which one cannot part. And yet for Sabbath there was a puzzle, an inconsistency that he couldn't fathom, a suspicion that he couldn't elude. What obligation was she fulfilling, and to whom, by leaving her sex diary to be discovered? Against which of her men was she protesting? Against Mattia? Against Sabbath? Which of us did you intend to slay? Not me. Surely not me. You loved me. I want to see your hands up in the air. The words boomed at him out of nowhere, and then he was fixed in the spotlight as though he were alone among the tombstones to perform a one-man show. Sabbath, star of the cemetery, vaudevillian to the ghost, front-line entertainer to the troops of the dead. Sabbath bowed. There should have been music. Behind him, the slyly carnal old swing music, ushering Sabbath onto the stage. There should have been life's most reliable pleasure, the innocent amusement of the Bee Sextet's Ain't Misbehavin'. Slam Stewart playing the bass, and the bass playing Slam. Instead, there was a disembodied voice politely requesting that he identify himself. Sweeping up from his bow, Sabbath announced, "It is I, Necrophilio, the nocturnal emission. I would not do that dip again, sir. I want to see those hands in the air." The patrol car illuminating Sabbath's theater was manned by a second trooper, who now climbed out with a gun drawn. A trainee. Matthew would be riding alone unless he was breaking somebody in. When he breaks them in, Drinka would boast, he always wants them to do all the driving. Fresh from the academy, kids on probation for a whole year, and it's Matthew who they use to break them in. Matthew says, there are some good kids who really want to do the job and do it well. There are some assholes too, bad guys with a don't-give-a-shit attitude, whatever they can get away with and so on. But to do a good job, to do what you're supposed to do, to keep your motor vehicle activity up and get your cases in on time, to keep your car the way it's supposed to be kept. That's what Matthew teaches them. He just rode with somebody for 3 months, and the boy gave Matthew a tie clip, a gold tie clip. He said, "Matt's my best buddy ever." The trainee had him covered, but Sabbath did nothing to resist arrest. He had only to start to run, and a trainee, rightly or wrongly, would more than likely drill him right through the head. But when Matthew made it to the bottom of the hill, all the trainee did was clap the cuffs on Sabbath and assist him into the back of the car. It was a young black man about Matthew's age, and he remained absolutely silent, uttered not a syllable of disgust or indignation because of what Sabbath looked like or how he was dressed or what he had done. He helped Sabbath onto the back seat, mindful to see that the flag did not slip from his shoulders, and gently re-centered on Sabbath's bald skull the God Bless America yarmulke, which had fallen forward onto his forehead as he ducked into the car. Whether this betokened an excess of kindness or of contempt, the prisoner couldn't decide. The trainee did the driving. Matthew was no longer in tears, but from the back seat Sabbath could see something uncontrollable working the muscles of his broad neck. "How's my partner?" the trainee asked as they started down the mountain. Matthew gave no reply. "He is going to kill me. He is going to do it. Rid of life. It's happening at last." "And where are we going?" asked Sabbath. "We're taking you in, sir," the trainee replied. "May I ask what the charges might be?" "The charges!" Matthew erupted. "The charges!" "Breathe, Matt," the trainee said. "Just do the breathing you taught me." "If I may say so," Sabbath offered over-precisely in a tone that he knew to have driven at least Rosanna crazy, "his sense of effrontery is lodged in a fundamental misapprehension." "Be still," the trainee suggested. "I only want to say that something was happening that he cannot possibly understand. The serious side of it he has no way of assessing." "Serious!" cried Matthew, and pounded on the dashboard with his fist. "Take him in, Matt. That's it. That's the job. Let's just do it." "I'm not using words to confound anyone. I do not exaggerate," said Sabbath. "I do not say correct or savory. I do not say seemly or even natural. I say serious, sensationally serious, unspeakably serious, solemnly, recklessly, blissfully serious. It's rash of you, sir, to go on like this. I'm a rash guy. It's inexplicable to me, too. It's displaced virtually everything else in my life. It seems to be the whole aim of my being. And that's how come we're taking you in, sir. I thought you were taking me in so I could tell the judge how I depraved Matthew's mother. Look, you've caused my partner a lot of pain," the trainee said, his voice still impressively subdued. "You've caused his family a lot of pain. I have to tell you that you are now saying things that are causing me a lot of pain." "Yes, that's what I hear from people all the time. People continuously telling me that the great thing I was called to do in life was cause pain. The world is just flying along pain-free, happy-go-lucky humanity off on one long fun-filled holiday, and then Sabbath is set down in life. And overnight the place is transformed into a loony bin of tears. Why is that? Can someone explain it to me?" "Stop!" cried Matthew. "Stop the car!" "Matty, get the bastard in." "Stop the fucking car, Billy. We're not taking him in." Sabbath straightaway leaned forward in his seat, lurched forward without his hands to steady him. "Take me in, Billy. Don't listen to Matty. He's not being objective. He's let himself get personally involved. Take me in so I can purge myself publicly of my crimes and accept the punishment that's coming to me." There were deep woods to either side of the road where the police car crept onto the shoulder. Billy stopped the car and turned off the lights. The dark domain of that night again. And now, thought Sabbath, the feature attraction, the thing that matters most, the unforeseen culmination for which he had battled all his life. He had not realized how very long he had been longing to be put to death. He hadn't committed suicide because he was waiting to be murdered. Matthew leaped from the car and around to the back, where he opened the door and pulled Sabbath out. Then he undid the handcuffs. That was all. He undid the handcuffs and said, If you sick freak bastard, if you ever mention my mother's name to anyone, or anything about my mother to anyone at any time, anywhere, I'm coming after you." With his eyes just inches from Sabbath, he began to cry. "You hear me, old man? You hear me?" "But why wait when you can have your satisfaction now? I start for the woods and you shoot. Attempted escape. Billy here'll back you up, won't you, Bill? We let the old guy take a leak and he tried to run away." "You sick fuck!" screamed Matthew. "You filthy, sick son of a bitch!" And flinging open the front passenger door, he violently pitched himself back into the car. "But I'm going free. I've reveled in the revolting thing one time too many, and I'm going free. I'm a ghoul. I'm a ghoul. After causing all this pain, the ghoul is running free. Matthew!" But the cruiser had driven off, leaving Sabbath ankle-deep in the puddling of the springtime mud, blindly engulfed by the alien inland woods, by the rain-making trees and the rain-washed boulders, and with no one to kill him except himself. And he couldn't do it. He could not fucking die. How could he leave? How could he go? Everything he hated was here.